Can you just take me through the wording on it? Was a little funky. We don't often see expected to be fired and replaced by, precisely for the reason you just said. It means that you haven't had a conversation with the person who's being fired yet. So if they're expected to be fired, then it's almost assuming that it's going to go that way. How could this have gone down and I don't mean to put you in a position of criticizing Ken Rosenthal. I'm not saying he did anything wrong. But
no, I'm not. Let me just come out at the beginning and say I'm not going to criticize Ken Rosenthal.
Yeah, nor do I mean to.
And here's why. Because at the end of the day, there is but one standard and threshold by which reporters abide, and that is, did I get it right? Was the information correct? Because that's how we go about getting it. That to me is, as long as it's legal, that is a personal and ethical thing. When do we put it out? Again, that is a personal and ethical thing. Did he get it right? He 100% did get it right. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that goes back on whatever source it was that gave him that information, and that source, or those multiple sources, seemingly did not have Scott Servais being informed as a concern in his or her mind, and that's the part I think that stuck with people inside the organization when they said yesterday was a really dark day. It wasn't just a dark day because they fired a manager who they thought was going to take them to the playoffs and take them potentially to their first World Series. It was because they did so in such a fashion that struck people as wrong, right? Getting rid of a guy stinks. Getting rid of him in that manner, that didn't just stink. That was just wrong.
Jeff, you mentioned that you thought something had to happen with where they were at. What do you see as the options?
I mean, Shannon, it is ultimately going to be on the manager, right? Because Jerry Dipoto is probably not going to fire himself. John Stanton and Chris Larson clearly have not gotten to the point where they believe that Jerry Dipoto or people in the baseball operations department need to go. We're past the trade deadline, so it's not like you can go and upgrade your roster with anyone other than guys who are getting DFA'd from other organizations, probably aren't very good in the first place. So there needs to be a shakeup of some manner or variety, and they already got rid of Brant Brown, and clearly Jared DeHart went along with Scott Servais here, so they're trying to do something. I guess that thing is a new voice. That thing is someone who's respected, really respected, in Dan Wilson. And look, we have seen scenarios where Ned Yost, got whacked. Dale Swain took over, and all of a sudden the Brewers were reinvigorated. I don't put it past this Mariners team to make another run. Like, we've seen how good they can be when they were 10 games ahead of everybody else in the division. And that team isn't missing. In fact, I think it's a better team, at least offensively now, than it was back then. So the notion that the Mariners are just dead in the water here it's not right. I still think they have a run in them, but is Dan Wilson the guy to get it out of them? Is Edgar Martinez, if he's joining the staff, as Adam Jude said he's going to be the guy to fix the hitters? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that different in this case may not be a bad thing.
We're going to come back to Dan Wilson and potentially Edgar here in a minute, just to kind of wrap up the Scott portion of it. Do you think he will be in demand for any of the other 29 clubs in the game?
Yes. I don't know if it's going to be in the manager seat, but Scott Servais will have a job pretty much anywhere he wants it. Yes.
You think he'll manage again?
I don't know if he wants to manage again, because, he was on the player development side and he was good at that. And I think the day-to-day grind of managing can be really taxing on someone. And going back into a front office role could better serve his life at this point. But would I hire him as manager? Yes, I would hire him to manage a team. Now, I don't want to look past some of the issues he had and pretend that Scott Servais was a perfect manager.
Mm-hmm.
Like inside of that clubhouse, and this dates back years, there were issues that just never got resolved, and there were players who were never on board with him. And when you are looking at a manager and assessing how he did, it's not just the tactical stuff. It's what did the clubhouse think of him? And there were enough people in the Mariners clubhouse who weren't fans of Scott Servais that, it's not like there was celebrating yesterday, but there were some people who were like, okay, yeah, it was time. That being said, he was around for a long time and managed to get the best out of a lot of people in that clubhouse. So however bad some players say he might have been, he still did the job, and I think he still did it pretty well.
Dan Wilson becomes, talking to Jeff Passan, by the way, Dan Wilson becomes the next manager. The big surprise yesterday wasn't that Dan Wilson was in the job, but that he wasn't in the job on an interim basis, that they're actually just giving him the job moving forward. What do you make of it?
I don't really get it, but I mean, is that really all that? Is that? Let's just look at this practically, though, Mike. Are they giving him like a long-term contract right now? I don't think so. And so can't you, if this doesn't work, can't you just cut bait?
I don't think so. No, I don't think you can. No. Because of Dan Wilson's status and stature in the community here, Dan's beloved. So if you were going to do that, I don't think you would do that with Dan Wilson. You would give him the interim tag and say, hey, Dan's going to do it for a couple of months. He's going to help us out. And at the end of that, if it works out great, hey, maybe he'll be the next manager here. But you would never set up a popular ambassador for the team to potentially get run a couple of months later. That I don't think you would do it that way.
Yeah, and you would also never fire a manager by social media.
Good point.
So,
but I don't know. I do think they're trying to give him the job.
I appreciate you trying to bring logic to this situation, Mike, but I don't know that it really applies, honestly. I think they're scrambling right now. I think when you hire a guy who's never managed a day in the big leagues and has managed a week in the minor leagues, and who, for his grace, his intelligence, all of the good things that he brings to the job, is taking over an absolute tire fire right now. Logic generally is not the thing that's leading the way. So I do think that if, for example, the Mariners in the near future or at the end of the season decide that Jerry Dipoto is not the person to lead them going forward, you're suggesting to me that they're going to bring in a new general manager or president of baseball operations, hand this person the keys to the job and say, yeah, but you don't get to choose your manager.
I'm not saying that. No, I'm not. I think they're going to keep the president in place, and they're going to go forward with Jerry and Dan Wilson next season.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, I guess my point is interim's just a word. I don't know that there's any designation that you could put on the guy. I agree. It's a little odd giving him the job full time, but I don't think that that precludes you from getting rid of him if it's not working.